Let's dive in. We are going to do a special session today. So we relatively rarely have guests on these. And we're always excited to have guests. And frankly, our experience has been that there aren't a lot of guests that deliver a ton of value, right? People just aren't always used to presenting. It's very smart people. But there are a handful of folks who have been just unbelievably amazing. And Josh is one of them. So I'll introduce Josh in a second, but Josh is one of the smartest people in the world about direct mail fundraising. And the thing I love about Josh is how clear a communicator he is, both in terms of his fundraising, but also in terms of teaching everybody else, right? There are some experts who just say, I'm an expert, and the best thing you can do is just hire me because it's so complicated and only I know it. And Josh does such a good job of breaking it down into so clear, so simple that you'll feel like an expert at the end of this session. A couple quick housekeeping notes before we dive in. One, this event is CFRE approved as usual. At the end of the session, the end of the webinar, we're going to drop a survey in the chat. You'll click the survey, and that will certify your participation. So very simple. Do that, please. So very quick intros. My name is Patrick. Lucky to be the co-founder and co-CEO of FreeWill alongside Jenny, pictured here. We're very lucky to work alongside a bunch of wonderful people. We have passed the $9 billion mark raised for charities. We work with almost 1,500 nonprofit partners, including many of you. If that's you, know that we are especially grateful to partner. We have a ton of experience all together. Lawyers, designers, fundraising experts, et cetera, et cetera. Love doing this stuff together. And we really just think about how do we care for you to an unreasonable degree that makes you better at your job, makes you happier, makes you more efficient, all those things. So that's what FreeWill does. I'm going to talk very briefly about Josh Alcorn. Josh, do you want to come on video for a moment just so we can embarrass you, and then we'll
of course.
Hey, everybody. Then we'll kick you off video, and then we'll bring you back on and give you the full spotlight. So this is
see me blush in person.
That's right. So Josh began his fundraising journey in 1988. Before many of you were born, but I was alive then too, at Maple Lane Elementary. Wait, Josh, what was the 1988 thing? What did you do?
It was like a Toys for Tots or a fundraiser for the food bank where you had to bring silver coins into school, and you would get these tags that you would put in your backpack. And I brought in more silver coins than anybody in the third grade. I think I was in third grade that year, and I must have been. So I had more silver tags and more silver coins, and thus more tags in my backpack than anybody. How did I get those tags? I walked around my neighborhood asking people for silver coins.
That's right. If you don't ask, you don't get it. So big first lesson. You were a teacher. You joined Joe Biden's PAC back when he was a senator from Delaware, assistant to the finance director. You also did that work in the second presidential campaign that Joe Biden ran. Now we're on 4, which is sort of wild. You worked for Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Many of you know this, but Majority Leader Reid was a beloved senator from Nevada, and also was just the most prolific fundraiser the Senate's ever seen. Just so good at fundraising, and obviously a lot to learn from him, from the late Senator Reid. Helped grow Beau Biden's National Donor Network. In 2015, helped establish, the Beau Biden Foundation for Protection of Children, which has done a ton of great work fighting child abuse. Was the chief engagement officer, did a whole bunch of other things like that. And then more recently joined the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference, which you might hear about later, as co-producer, and is the president of JMA Strategies, fundraising advisory, and is just overall brilliant. Direct Mail Minds, also a board member at St. Edmunds. St. Edmunds is a school in where?
Wilmington, Delaware. K through 8, all boys. I graduated from there in 1995, and am lucky to be on the board there now.
Awesome. What is he an expert in? Lots and lots of things, mainly effective donor communication as the number one thing that we're going to borrow from Josh today. He's been a teacher, he's been a barista, he's been a file clerk. He's also been a prolific fundraiser. He's a runner. He's a very fast runner. He's a reader and a music lover, and a father of two beautiful kids. Yeah. So glad you were well rested for today. Living in Kent Square, Pennsylvania. All right. So Josh, we'll take you off video. We'll come back to you in a second. Thank you for being here while we do that. A couple other quick housekeeping things. One is a big thank you to you all for joining. We are going to send this book called Unleashing the Power of Storytelling by Rob Biesenbach, if I'm saying that right, to 20 people. Great book on how to really effectively craft stories, not just in your fundraising writing, but in your life, right? And this will make your life a little bit more enjoyable. Really fun book. Again, survey at the end of the session, make a small note, and we will send it there. A couple other quick things before we get rolling. We asked you all how your week was going. People are back. People are ready to kick into the holidays, right? A lot happier, generally feeling very good. Other big news, expectations of how we're going to hit our goals this year, back up also. So my expectation here is that a lot of people had a very good Giving Tuesday and a really good start of the year. We have been seeing our own metrics. October was a stunningly good month. November was a very good month. And so really feeling very bullish at year-end fundraising generally across the board. So super, super exciting. So we're going to talk a little bit about direct mail. I'm going to actually go relatively quickly through this. Couple things. We'll send the recording. We'll send the slides after. So if you miss something, it's okay. By the way, I'll describe most of the visuals, and you can turn on closed captioning if you want, if you are hard of hearing, and that would make it a little bit easier for you. So direct mail seems to have some real enduring value. 56% of donors think it's the most trustworthy of all marketing channels. ROIs tend to be relatively high, and many people feel more personal connection than things on the internet. Not surprising. When you look across the board, and this isn't just nonprofit specific, right? It's overall industry and brands. Have people visited a website after receiving direct mail, and you start to see this integration of mail and other kinds of marketing. So boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, actually millennials are the highest in terms of visited a website after receiving direct mail, but you see it across the board. So lots of good stuff there. Why does it work, right? What's the, we get these stats. What's the actual why behind this? Well, one is it requires less cognitive effort to process an email. Our brains have an easier time remembering things that we can actually touch. There's obviously not as many distractions as there are on your computer, right? You can hold a piece in your hands, you can open it, you can fold it, you can play around with it, and it creates a much more memorable experience. It takes up physical space. So for better or worse, this has an average lifespan of 17 days before being tossed in the trash, right? So people have it, they have it around. It's something that you can be reminded of more than once, which is why we really like it. It's surprisingly popular across age groups. So the majority of Americans believe mail brings a sense of discovery to their lives. They feel excited. Boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z all get excited about mail. So this is a really interesting dynamic here. Millennials were the most likely to give by direct mail, but many of them they were also more motivated by email. So millennials are just coming on strong in overall giving across the board. When we look at who's giving and who prefers to give where, you can see that silent generation is still the peak for direct mail, right? It's the only place where giving mail surpasses giving through websites. Silent generation is folks born before 1945, so pre-boomers, right? Relatively small population compared to these other generations, partly because fewer people were born, partly because more of them have passed away. If you're born in 1940, you're what, 83, 84 this year, you're turning 84 next year. And so there's just fewer of these folks around. But you can see here that, mail plays a significant role still. So what's really interesting in the evolution of direct mail here is that it's sort of direct mail plus, right? So a great website means that your mail has more effect, right? So 44% of people said they visited a website after receiving postcards. Another 34% searched online. So these numbers get really big when you add them together. It proves trustworthiness, but the digital presence then proves your validity, right? So you really need both of these, and most of you have this, so we're in a good spot, right? They can complement each other. They can make a strong case for your nonprofit. This also plays the role of, things like phone calls interspersed with all of this stuff as well. The pandemic made direct mail more interesting for many people. So 46% said more interested, 34% are spending more time, 49% of affluent houses are more excited about receiving mail than pre-pandemic, right? So this is a real shift over the last few years. It's really interesting. But interesting, mail volume has peaked, right? So when we think about all the mail that everyone in America is getting, you see this sort of peak between 2000 and 2005. Now, what happens in 2005? The internet starts to take off, right? I mean, it really starts in the late 90s, but continues. And so you see that actually total mail volume, right? A lot of that is when we call junk mail or commercial mail, and first class mail, which is either bills, right? Sort of business mail or sort of personal mail. That's also, I mean, look, it's at half what it was in 2000. Now, this number is even more dramatic than it looks. Why is that? Because the US population is much bigger than it was in 1970 when this starts. So the per person first class mail, the per person total mail volume is much lower than it's ever been. Now, why is this an opportunity? It means you stand out more, right? Because there's more marketing channels across the board. Now, one thing is that how's the mail service still alive, right? What's happening here? Well, it turns out that revenue for the US Postal Service is higher than it's ever been. And what is it? It's mostly a parcel delivery service now, right? So USPS, American Postal Service, is generating most of its money, an enormous portion of its money with packages here. So super interesting to see that. That's obviously a huge shift from 20, 30 years ago. Now, here's a little quirk, right? So mail stands out, but yet for some people, giving from direct mail is going down pretty quickly. And small dollar giving across the board is going down. Now, what's happening here? Well, there's a lot of different factors at play. One of the huge problems here is that people respond to direct mail traditionally with a check. Now, 45% of American adults did not write a single check in 2022, according to Yahoo News. Fewer than 15% of Americans say they write several checks a month. So suddenly, we're asking for something where a traditional reply mechanic is just disappearing, right? It's sort of really interesting to see how the use of money and the different ways we pay for things actually changes behavior. As a side note, I know somebody overseas who, among other things, helps to run an armored car business. Now, why is this interesting? The armored car business is disappearing. Why is the armored car business disappearing? It's because cash is disappearing. So there's actually nothing to sort of carry in and protect an armored car. And so, they've got a quarter of the business they had 10 years ago, which is so interesting to see how these things all flow together, right? So one of the biggest challenges for direct mail is the typical response rate, check, is not always there. And by the way, a lot of people aren't really comfortable writing their credit card numbers on that. And boy, if you mess with the transcription, you might not get any payment at all, right? So check usage is among sharp decline among all age groups, and this includes baby boomers, right? And silent generation. So it's not just that Gen Z doesn't have any checks. It's that across the board, this is happening. And the Federal Reserve in Philadelphia, where Josh is, even predicted that paper checks will be obsolete by 2026. This to me feels like a little bit of an aggressive estimate, but obsolete, it doesn't really matter if it's obsolete or if 5% of the country is using it. It can't be your primary strategy. So we'll talk more about that too. So how do we think about direct mail in 2023? Well, you all say, I'm mostly somewhat knowledgeable here. Some of you say I'm very knowledgeable. For the folks who are very knowledgeable, we would love over the course of the next 45 minutes if you contribute anything you're thinking or things in the chat. It's always great to have more ideas. When we ask you what percentage of income is coming from direct mail campaigns, well, 1% says more than 3/4, but 10% says more than half, which is a big deal. 25% say a quarter to a half, and 30% say about 10 to 25%. And then a third of you or so have less than 10, right? So you can see a really big divide here as well. We want to be learning more from the folks who are more than half, right? What else can we do there? What do we use it for? A lot of folks are using it for planned giving. A lot of people use it for stewardship of major donors and major giving. These are really important. And then annual giving tends to be obviously a huge portion. We asked some of you, how do you incorporate it? What's new? A couple of things here that I wanted to call out. So some folks have only done direct mail asks for the holidays, and now they're adding 2 more. This is a really important point that we got in the survey. We are adding more donor cultivation and stewardship, but we are also adding more cultivation of specific types of giving. Non-cash gifts, right? Stock giving, donor advised funds, QCDs, others, planned giving, employer matcher. This is one of the keys to breaking through the check problem, right? So if you're asking for large non-cash gifts, this is a really, really big deal. Some of these gifts are going to be $100,000 for you. End of year campaigning, spring giving, business giving campaign. We've been doing the same campaigns with no real analysis over 6 to 8 years. So I'm trying to figure out some new plans here, right? So we'll talk about that. We're going to plan to continue the same calendar of direct mail, but we're going to start doing multi-medium and multi-channel approaches, right? This is very smart, right? So we're thinking, how do these all work together? Because they don't sort of exist on their own. How frequently? Semi-annually is the most common, quarterly, monthly, some others, right? So you see a big divide here. What's the average amount you're receiving? A lot of people 50 to 100, a lot of people 100 to 200, right? So that's sort of where we're seeing. We need to think about how do we really drive that amount up to make these campaigns more successful. Do you have any direct mail campaigns with marketing strategies? A lot of people say always, a lot of people use sometimes. And so now we're starting to see this shift in a better way. This is very exciting. It's higher than it was a year ago. Most successful types of engagement. I'm glad that Josh is here to tell you more about this. Story-driven appeals tend to be the most effective by an enormous margin. So we'll dive into what that looks like. Did we send a gift catalog? Almost no one sent a gift catalog. We'll show you what one of those looks like. Are we testing direct mail? More than half of you say never. 12% say regularly. My guess is those tend to be the larger organizations. And then we see some folks who occasionally. All right. I raced through that because last time we did this, we did not give enough time to Josh. And so we're going to, Josh, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to let you share your screen. And then we'll swap back out in a few minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you, Patrick, for bringing me on. And thank you, Patrick and Phoebe, for hosting this. I mean, you guys have an incredible presence in the nonprofit world, and certainly bringing this many people, 800 plus, together on a Tuesday afternoon or Tuesday morning is a testament to the work you guys have done building a community around learning and around getting better at this fundraising thing. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Phoebe. And thank you to all of you for being here. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to run through a quick little slide deck and then share some examples as we go. So I'm here to talk about direct mail. You guys need a direct mail program. Hopefully you have one. If you don't have one, hopefully you'll be able to learn today just what you can do to get one started for next year. It is not too late to send something to your donors this year. I should say that too. I'll show an example of a year-end fundraising letter that you can sort of download and copy and get that out in the mail this week. I have a client who's sending theirs out on Friday. It's not too late. All right, so what are we going to talk about? I'm going to talk about the building blocks of a direct mail campaign. I'll break that down into the individual things that go into a direct mail program over the course of a year. I will share a calendar of what a robust direct mail program looks like over the course of a year. I'll leave that on the screen for a little while and just sort of talk over top of it for you guys to look and to copy. I will share the recipe for a good direct mail appeal. So when I say appeal, I mean a fundraising letter. This is where you're asking a donor to make a gift. I'll share a recipe that works great, that's proven to work great. And then I'll get into some examples. I actually have 4 examples to share with you today. I have a fundraising letter, I have a newsletter, donor reporting letter, and I did find a good gift catalog that I'll be able to share with you guys too, all of which will be sent to you along with the recording and the slide deck later today. If we have time, we'll have some Q&A. So let's jump in. Building blocks of a good direct mail campaign. Folks, direct mail works really well, as Patrick said. And when it works well, it's because there's a story at the center of your direct mail, of the piece of direct mail that folks are receiving. We need to be sharing the need when we're communicating with our donors, and direct mail is a perfect way to share the need. So here's what goes into a really robust, really powerful direct mail program. And no surprise, these are the 3 things that are sort of at the core of all of our fundraising, whether it's through the mail, whether it's email, whether it's major gift work, whether it's at events, however you're fundraising, these are the 3 things you need to get really good at. 1, asking powerfully. I believe, and I think that the testing will show, that when you're showing the need, when you're sharing what it is, what problem it is that your organization is solving for your beneficiaries, donors will respond better to that. I think as fundraisers, we tend to, maybe not as fundraisers, as nonprofit people, we tend to want to not share the need. We want to pretend that the world is great and that donors just need to give us money because we're doing great things. But there is a reason that your organization exists. There is a problem that you were created to solve. And if you're sharing that with donors, they want to solve that problem too. They're your donors for a reason. They want to solve that problem. And when you're asking powerfully, you're sharing the need. One quick thing also about powerful asks. They work best when you're not telling a completed story, when you're telling an incomplete story, when you're setting up the problem that exists for one of your beneficiaries or a problem that your organization solves, and you're asking the donor to provide that solution. One of the reasons I think direct mail sort of gets a bad rap is because some organizations send out letters that don't work. And the number one reason your fundraising doesn't work most often is that you're telling a completed story. You're telling a happy story when you're asking donors to make a gift and they see pictures of smiling faces and problems being solved and say, well, you don't need my money because there's no problem here. You seem to have it under control. And then the next part of a good direct mail program is prompt thanking. The industry standard is that you're getting a thank you note out within somewhere between 24 and 48 hours after receiving a gift. That's super easy if folks are making online contributions where they get that sort of automatic email that confirms their gift. A little bit harder with checks and with snail mail gifts. So the industry standard, like I said, is 24 to 48 hours. That's harder for small organizations. So if you can aim to have that out in a week, that's great. And the job of thanking is to let the donor know that their gift was received and that it will be put to work very soon. The best thank you letters, the best thank you notes are personal, gracious. They sound like they're written from one human to another human. And a little bonus, if you include a reply card when you're sending out your acknowledgement letters, your thank you letters, you will raise 5% more. Not suggesting that you ask donors for a gift in your thank you notes, but that you're providing them an opportunity to make a gift. Sometimes that's a reply card attached to the thank you note. Sometimes that's an envelope with a small reply card sort of just tucked in the envelope. But if you're able to do that, you will raise about 5% more. The third piece to a good direct mail program, to good fundraising generally, is regular reporting. This is where you're letting the donor know that their gift has made some profound impact in the world, that some change has taken place because of the donor's generosity. In an ideal world, you're asking the donor to do a thing, you're thanking them for doing that thing, and then you're letting them know what thing was done because of their gift. So to use an example from my last organization, the Beau Biden Foundation, we might send an appeal that asks a donor to make a gift to protect a child from abuse. Then you're thanking them for making a gift and protecting a child from abuse. And then you're reporting back to them what that gift did, the story of one child who was saved or one teacher who recognized the child was being abused and was able to get them the help they need. So these three things sort of work in concert and are at the base of all good fundraising, but especially a good direct mail program. Okay, how do I move my slides down? Okay, so now how does this come together? What are the sort of those are the building blocks? What are the components of a direct mail campaign? There's three main ones, and then I'll talk about the extra stuff on the slide here. First, it's your fundraising appeals. These are your fundraising letters. I suggest that most organizations send either a 2 or a 4-page letter that includes a reply device, something that the donor can send back to you along with their contribution. It can be attached, it can be detached. Attached meaning you're sending a 8.5 by 14 piece of paper with the reply card either perforated or just attached to the bottom. Detached is just when your printer or you cut that reply card off and it's a separate piece of paper. Or a full-page reply device. These are working really great these days. They're a full 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, plenty of space for your donors to write in their information, plenty of space for you to talk about the power of the gift as well. And then you're including a return envelope as well. One of the things, if you guys give a little shout out to my friend John Lepp, who's got a great TikTok. He's the only fundraising consultant I know who's on TikTok. He's got a great TikTok series where he's sort of showing all of the mail that I think it's his mom gets, and just stacks and stacks of direct mail that she gets every week, every month. And they're all the same, right? All the envelopes are the regular standard business envelope, number 9 or number 10, I forget what size it is now. And they all look the same. So if you can create an outer envelope for your direct mail that gets noticed, either it's a big size or it's an odd color or there's some sort of design on it, that's going to get noticed. All right, so then the next piece of a direct mail campaign are your newsletters and your donor reporting letters. Newsletters are sort of 4-page, I'll show you an example, but they're 4-page newsletters that are full of stories of what the donor's gift has done. So these are success stories, things that your organization has done because of the donor's generosity. Donor reporting letter is just one of those stories in a more traditional 8.5 by 11 package. These are great ways to also raise more money when you're sending your donors a newsletter or donor reporting letter. You want to include, again, an opportunity for them to make a gift. All of this, your fundraising appeals, your newsletters, your donor reporting letters, are supported with emails and with social media, where you're sending basically the exact same letter that you're sending to your donors, the fundraising letter that you're sending to your donors through the mail, you're sending that to your email list. Chances are you have more email addresses than you do snail mail addresses. So there are people who are on your list who may not yet be donors. And if you send them a version of your fundraising letter in email, you're likely to find some new donors. Also, same goes for social media. So those are sort of the three bedrocks. The other two things you want to think about with a good direct mail program are your major donors. So depending on the size of your organization, you may have a major gifts officer who's responsible for managing, somewhere between 100 and 120 donors. If you don't have a major gifts officer, chances are you yourself as a fundraiser or your executive director or CEO is responsible for managing some donors and being in relationship and communication with them. You can absolutely use your direct mail to drive that relationship. What does that look like? Well, this time of year, when you're sending your year-end fundraising appeals, you're treating your major donors, the letters that you're sending your major donors, in a slightly different way. Instead of being in a 6x9 envelope or a regular number 9 envelope, you're sending it in a 9x12 envelope. You're handwriting the address. You're paper clipping the reply device to the appeal letter so that the package feels a little different. There's a little texture to it. Maybe you're sending an entirely different year-end fundraising letter to your major donors, but you can absolutely use direct mail to drive some relationships, some major donor relationships. And then the last piece of a direct mail program are sort of what I call these special campaigns. These are things that don't fit neatly in a newsletter or donor reporting letter category or as specific fundraising appeals. These are things like gift catalogs. I'll show an example of that. These are things like donor surveys that you can be sending your donors. January is a great time to send your donors a donor survey. These are things like legacy gift appeals, right? I know Patrick and his team are really great at giving you language to use for your legacy gift appeals. You can also use direct mail to recruit monthly donors. I think probably better to do that online for most organizations, unless you're really big and you have the capacity to be sending donors sort of their reminder letters every month, asking them to send back their monthly gift. But I would imagine that the vast majority of monthly donor recruitment campaigns are run online now. But if you have donors who you don't have email addresses for, but are regular givers, you should absolutely print out your electronic monthly donor recruitment campaign and just send it on to those donors for whom you only have snail mail addresses. All right, I'm moving pretty quickly here. Not looking at chat. We'll get to some questions over there. But these are the things that go into your direct mail campaign. Good? Awesome. All right, next slide. I'm going to leave this calendar up here, and I'm going to talk about a couple of principles that I use when I'm helping organizations plan their year of direct mail. So the first principle I have is that you should, when you're planning your fundraising year, you're planning your direct mail campaign. First principle is that you start by scheduling the things that raise the most money. I've told stories before, I think, on this webinar about the principle of rocks in a jar. What are the things that are going to raise you the most money? Those are the first rocks you put in the jar because they take up the most space. So I always encourage folks to first figure out when they're going to be sending their fundraising letters, their fundraising appeals. Clearly, November, December are a great time to be asking. Donor generosity is at an all-time high this time of year, and you should absolutely be asking your donors at least a couple of times in the end of November and December. I actually encourage folks to send 2 fundraising letters, one right around Thanksgiving and one in the middle of December. Obviously, we have Giving Tuesday as well. This year it was in November, but sometimes that falls in December. So you absolutely want to have a couple of appeals in November and December. If you're an organization that has a fiscal year end of June 30th, you should probably be sending a piece of direct mail sometime in May or June for that fiscal year end. And then you want to just sort of look at your calendar and say, how many more fundraising letters can I send? If you're an organization that does anything relating to kids, whether it's a school or it's a after school program or anything involving kids, you probably want to be asking your donors in August, late July, August into September, or a back to school campaign, fundraising campaign, even if you're not like doing any work in school, donors who associate your organization with helping kids are thinking about back to school. Most people are thinking about back to school that time of year. I also think February is a great time to be asking. February, March is a great time to be asking. If you have a gala or a special fundraising event, if it's a golf tournament, if it's a gala, you can use your direct mail to support your gala fundraising as well. The fact of the matter is most of our organizations are only going to get a few hundred people at our gala, but we're going to have sometimes hundreds or thousands of people on our direct mail list. We should be asking those folks who we know aren't coming to make a gift to support whatever program you're funding at the event, if that makes sense. So once you have your appeals scheduled, then you want to go through and look at the months where you don't have any fundraising, when you don't have any asks out there, and schedule your newsletters or donor reporting letters. Generally speaking, I suggest that folks have one newsletter or donor reporting letter for every 2 fundraising asks. So if you're asking 4 times a year through the mail, you should have about 2 newsletters a year. If you're asking 10 times a year, you should have 4 or 5 newsletters or donor reporting letters. And don't get like totally freaked out. You can absolutely be asking, you can be sending a fundraising letter every month, and that's totally fine, depending on how big your organization is. So once you have your appeals scheduled, once you have your reporting mechanisms scheduled, then you want to think about other months where you have empty space in your calendar. So this is my second principle. Second principle is don't go dark on your donors. What are times of the year where you're not communicating with your donors? You want to find something to say to those donors in those months. Maybe it's a email appeal. Maybe it's an e-news story, right? But as long as you're in front of your donors with regular communication, you're going to do a lot better. All right, so those are the 2 sort of principles that underline that I think about when I'm scheduling my year. When am I going to be asking my donors? When will I be reporting to my donors? And then where are the months where I'm not communicating with my donors at all? Let me find something to say to them. Let me find something to ask them. All right, so I'm going to leave that up for one more second, and then and just maybe I'll say one more thing before I get to the next slide, and that's this. Year-end fundraising works in November and December. Can't send a year-end fundraising letter in January. Back to school fundraising works in July, August, maybe the beginning of September. You shouldn't send a back to school fundraising letter or fundraising appeal in October. And the principle there is that you want to ask before the need exists. So donors fund potential outcomes. They don't want to make a gift to support something that's already been completed. So if you send your donor a back to school appeal, help us prepare, help us train a bunch of teachers before they get back into school, and teachers are already back in school, it's not going to work as well. So as you're scheduling your fundraising letters, as you're thinking about when you'll be asking your donors, you want to make sure that you're asking before the need, before the thing that you want them to do happens. It seems like a no-brainer, but you'd be surprised how many fundraising appeals I get at the end of September that are back to school asks. Kids are already back to school. What's my gift going to do? Okay, next slide. The recipe for a really good fundraising letter. So we've talked about the general principles of fundraising. Now I want to talk about just a fundraising letter, because this is where most of you are going to raise, the vast majority of direct mail fundraising, direct mail dollars come in through fundraising letters as opposed to donor reporting letters and newsletters. So what's the recipe? A couple components here. The first thing you should always do in your direct mail fundraising is get to the point quickly. A lot of times organizations will ask in the 5th or 6th paragraph. They'll spend a bunch of time, a bunch of words talking about how great the donor's last gift was and thanking them for that. How great the gala that the organization had 3 months ago was, how much money they've raised this year. And then they'll get into the story. So that's going to work less well than saying, I'm writing to you today because there's a child who's being abused who needs someone to help them. Right to the point. Let the donor know in the first couple of seconds that they're scanning your letter what the purpose of this letter is. Number two, you want to repeat your ask often. Repetition is your friend. Folks, I watched the Philadelphia Eagles lose a heartbreaking game to the San Francisco 49ers on Sunday. I saw the exact same Ford F-150 commercial at least 4 times, maybe 6 times. My daughter knows the words to the Burger King commercial, right? Because it's on all the time during the football games that we watch. So repetition is your key, is your friend. And the more often you're repeating what the thing is that your donor, what the problem is that your donors can solve, the better. I said this already, but you want to tell an incomplete story in your fundraising. There's a boy who, I'll show you one of the letters that I'll share in a few minutes. It's about a young boy who's living in a house with living in a home with a child predator. That story needs to be solved. That problem needs to be solved, and the donor will make a gift to provide the positive end to that story, as opposed to, let me tell you the story about a boy named Stefan who lives with a predator. His mom got him the help that he needed. Now he doesn't live with a predator. Problem solved. Send in a gift. What's my gift going to do? That young boy's already been helped. Point number 4, you want to summarize the letter in the headline that's at the top right of your letter and in the PS. And basically that means you say something in the PS like, please send in a gift right now or before the deadline and then whatever the outcome that your organization creates, whatever problem you're asking donors to solve in that letter. That also works at the top right of your fundraising letter. I'll show you a couple of examples of that. Point number 5, and this is really, really hard. It was very hard for me when I first started doing this, and it's hard for a lot of organizations. And that is that you want to leave your organization out of the letter. You're asking donors in your fundraising to make a gift to help a beneficiary, to create some change in the world. You're not asking your donors to make a gift to your organization. So I would encourage you to strike all of that out of your fundraising. Use more you language. Count up how many yous you have versus how many we's and I's and first person language. The more you're talking to your donor about what their gift will do, the better. The more you're taking your organization out of the relationship and introducing your donor to the beneficiary and asking your donor to solve a problem for the beneficiary, the better. Okay, number 5, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was right, number 6. This is a stylistic thing. Most donors will scan your fundraising. They won't read every single word. They'll scan it. So they'll look down the left side of the page, look at the headline, look at the whatever's in the upper right. They'll flip it over. They'll look at the PS. They'll come back to the first page. And so you need your letter to be very easy to read. The easiest way to make your letter simple to read is to indent your paragraphs so that folks can scan easily and use big font, 13-point font. I recommend 2- and 4-page letters. 1-page letters often have font that are like 10-point font, like really small, really cramped in to make it fit on a page, because some board member said that donors don't read anything, so you got to just send a 1-page letter. Not true. Send a 2-page letter. Indent those paragraphs, give plenty of space between lines, and make that font 13 at least. Okay, last point, your letter should feel like it was written by one person to one person. I always think of Patrick when I talk about this, because one of the things I learned from Patrick years and years ago in email fundraising is that you should write your letter as if you're writing in this case, a fundraising email. When Patrick and I were working together back in 2006 and 2007, like you're writing an email to your Aunt Sally. Your fundraising letter should sound the same way. I'm writing to you today to ask you to make a gift. Simple language, colloquial language, lose the jargon. Don't speak in concepts, speak in concrete, with concrete language. Don't ask donors to change the world, ask them to feed one person. Don't ask a donor to bring the arts to the community. Ask them to make sure one show happens next week for kids, something like that. But you want to be specific. You want it to feel like one person talking to one person. Okay, moving fast here, but I'm hoping you guys are doing all right. I'm going to share a couple of examples. So let me stop this share and pull up, let's see, share screen. Let's see, what do we want to look at first? We want to look at review. There we go. Okay. Oops, that's not the right one. Sorry, folks. I thought I had closed all of my preview windows. Oh, no, you know what? That's because it's in.
Josh, while you pull that up, I just want to highlight a couple of things that I really took from this and give you the chance to figure that out.
Thank you. Thank you.
A couple of things that really stood out to me from Josh. One is this idea of the better thank you notes. And like, it's a really simple way to say, like, just the concept, instead of like, thank you for your generosity, like your gift is going immediately to doing this. It's just that like rush of dopamine that's like, you just, like I'm doing this. It feels action. It feels very exciting. So that's a huge thing. The idea of these sort of like newsletters and follow up. I love the idea of sort of just different textures and different for your major donors, right? Mm-hmm. It's funny that a paperclip might be the highest ROI spending you have at the entire company or the entire organization, things like that. So I'll hand it back to you for some of these. Thank you. But I wanted to highlight that.
Thanks for filling some space there while I figured out where my documents were. Talk about paperclips. My friend, I'll share an example of my friend's gift catalog in a few minutes, but she works for an animal rescue, a cat rescue. And her gift catalog came with a paperclip that was a cat. It was a paperclip. It was a cat paperclip in the shape of a cat. And that was the coolest thing that ever came in a piece of direct mail in my house. My daughter loved it. So this is a year-end fundraising letter. You guys will get a copy of this. So I'm not going to read all of it. It's for a client of mine called the Coalition for Safer Delaware that sort of does gun violence prevention work. Bringing together some Sandy Hook Promise programs, some Moms Demand Action programs. And so you'll see just a couple of things. I'll point out how easy it is to read. Short paragraphs, short sentences, indented. This is 13 font. Probably could have been 14 or 13 and a half. Up here, the headline, deadline, December 31st. Donors know exactly what this is about right there. Short paragraphs to start. What's underlined or bolded or emphasized in some way is what the donor's gift will do, one of the asks that you're making, the problem that exists that the donor's gift will solve. Again, super short sentences. I'm writing to you today to ask you to make a special year-end gift to stop gun violence in our schools and communities. That is super simple, super direct, right to the point. Donor knows exactly what they're being asked to do. Contrast that with, 3 or 4 paragraphs of here's what's going on in the organization. We got a new CEO this year. Our gala was great. Our programming is in 14 different communities. Oh, and by the way, all the way down here in at the very bottom of the first page, will you send in a year-end gift? Doesn't work nearly as well as something that's clear and direct. On the second page, I'll just make one quick point. I love it in direct mail when the last sentence, or the last line on the first page doesn't finish with a period, and the donor has to flip the page to keep reading to finish the thought that is in that sentence there. So anytime you can break a line in the middle of a sentence, awesome. We're repeating what the gift will do. Your gift will stop gun violence and protect a child. That means you'll be making our home, schools, and communities safer from all forms of gun violence. You'll notice in this letter here where the printer is lasering in the donor's name. That's a great tactic to get a donor's attention. Our eyes are drawn to a couple of things. One, emphasized lines or sentences, bold, underlined. We're drawn to the word you, our eyes are. We're drawn to our name. So every donor who scans this is going to read this paragraph. And so the paragraph is important. Josh, with youth gun violence up across our state, I'm doing everything I can to combat the NRA and keep our kids and streets safe from gun violence. Probably should have been a little bit more donor focused in that language rather than organization focused, but donors are going to read that and they know what the problem is that this letter is asking them to solve. And then we end with the PS, please send in your special gift before midnight to stop gun violence in our schools and communities. All right, so that's an example of a great year-end letter that worked, that hopefully will work really well. Hasn't yet been landed in folks' inboxes or mailboxes. I want to share now the full page reply device. This is not one that goes with that organization. This is for a different client, different organization, the Beau Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children. And what I want to highlight here is how much space donors have on a full page reply device versus how much they have on a 1/3 page reply device. So if you can imagine, I thought I had one sitting here, but a one-third page reply device is 1/3 of a page. It's pretty small. This just gives the donor a lot more space. So one of the things Patrick talked about at the very beginning was how we drive average gift size up for our direct mail. What are some things we as direct mail fundraisers, direct response fundraisers can do to increase the average gift size? Well, one of them is to provide custom gift ask amounts on your reply device. And what I mean when I say a custom gift ask amount is you're asking the donor to make a contribution that's unique to them, that's personalized to them. So if Josh Alcorn is a $25 donor, on a reply card with customized gift ask amounts, my first ask, the first number here is make a $25 gift. The next one is 50% more than that. So if it's $20, then the next one would be $30. And then the third ask is double my last gift amount. So that would be from 20 to 40, and then a surprise us. So if you're able to customize how much you're asking a donor to give on the reply card based on their last gift amount, you're going to see higher average gifts, because you're not asking a $50 donor to make a $500 contribution. You're not asking a $500 donor to make a $50 contribution. So it kind of works both ways. Down here, website and QR code. I do think that QR codes work great on reply devices. Please don't put them in your fundraising letter. Please don't put them on the envelope. If you're doing a smaller reply card that's just 1/3 of a page, put it on the back, because still, by and large, most folks are going to look at the front and then flip it over and scan to make the online gift. All right, so we got 10 minutes left. I'm going to show a quick example of a newsletter, and then I'm going to give an example of a gift catalog. So this is a newsletter. This is one I did for the Beau Biden Foundation way back in the spring of 2020, which feels like a lifetime ago. A newsletter is 4 pages, so it's got a front cover, and then it's got an inside cover. The inside cover tells one story of a great thing that happened because the donor made a gift. With really clear headlines, great pictures of smiling folks, calling out the donor with what their generosity provided. You got captions here, you got pull quotes, super easy to read, very simple language, colorful, full of great things that happen. And I probably would say, instead of he's protecting children thanks to you, it's you allowed him to protect children, or your gift is protecting children. Let me tell you the story of Sergeant Max. So then the second story in this article is about another police officer. Again, same idea, great story of something that happened that was wonderful because a donor made a gift. On the back page of your newsletter, this is where you're asking a donor for their next gift. More children need your help. My next gift to identify a predator and stop child abuse. This is proven to, once you make donors feel so good about their last gift and what their generosity accomplished, it's a great time to ask them to make another gift. Bonus points if you have matching funds for your newsletter fundraising. Okay, gift catalog time. I am moving so fast. I am not even looking at chat. Give me 2 more minutes to show you gift catalog, and then we'll talk about hopefully do some a little bit of Q&A. So this is a gift catalog. Gift catalogs are really great ways to raise money at the holidays. They don't feel like fundraising to your donors, and they don't feel like fundraising to you because you're writing a bunch of small stories of things, of wonderful things that your organization does, outcomes your organization creates. So, front page of a gift catalog looks just like the front page of a newsletter. Big picture, you language, you choose how to transform a life. Little holiday theme here because it's a gift catalog that's coming this time of year. Page 2. In a gift catalog, think of a gift catalog as like a roster of all of the programs you have or all of the outcomes that your organization creates. And you're asking a donor to pick one of those things and fund it for a period of time, or fund one instance of that or one occurrence of that. You're in the copy telling the story of what happens when that gift is made. So this is from an organization called the Animal Outreach of Shelby County. They're a cat rescue. And my friend Carrie Ann made this gift catalog and did just a bang up job. It's super simple. It looks very simple. And it just is going to work like gangbusters. Fill her food bowl. One of the most important things we can do for the cats in our care is give them a consistent, high quality diet. It's amazing how many health problems resolve after a couple of weeks of eating a consistent diet. So feed this cat for a week, 21 bucks. Feed this cat for her entire stay in foster care, $63. So what you're seeing is very specific things that a donor can purchase. Oftentimes donors will sit around with their kids or their grandkids and pick out some things that they want to do. Best examples of gift catalogs are like World Vision and Heifer International, international organizations that do work all over the world. Often have very specific things: buy a share of a goat, purchase help build a well to provide clean water to a family. I saw a quick thing: do these gifts become restricted? There are a couple of ways you can make sure that gifts are unrestricted. Down here on the back page of the catalog, gifts in this catalog are representative of the needs of homeless cats. All contributions will be used to provide help to homeless cats in the most effective way possible. If a specific need has been fulfilled, any additional funds will be applied to meet similar pressing needs. That language is what allows these gifts to be undesignated. You should spend the majority. You should spend a significant, there's proper language here, AFP certified language. You need to spend a meaningful amount of the money you raise from your gift catalog on the things that you're talking about in your gift catalog. But meaningful amount is a little bit open. As long as you're not raising a bunch of money from your gift catalog and then going out and doing something entirely different with it, you will absolutely be okay. And then along with the gift catalog comes an order form where folks can pick what it is they're going to buy. I'm going to buy 2 weeks of food for this cat. I'll put a little 2 in the quantity, total it up. Always include in your gift catalog on your order form where most needed. This is sort of the open ask. How much do I want to give? I'll just pick any number, put it there, and then one of everything. I believe, I don't know if Carrie Ann's here today, but I believe that the first gift she got back in response to this gift catalog was one of everything. Donor got it, looked at it, and wrote a check for $2,205. And then down here you have ways to give, credit card information. Some folks include honor cards where you can like write the name of the person you're buying the gift for, and the organization sends them something as well. So, whew. Okay, Patrick, we did a little bit better than we did last time. I'm going to go quickly to back to my slide deck and throw up one closing point. I guess I was done. So if folks want to get, I work for the Nonprofit Storytelling Conference. We wrote, my friend Chris Davenport, the founder of the conference, wrote a book called Story Prompts for Nonprofits that will help you tell better stories, find ways to, if you think you don't have stories to tell, this book will help you find it. Scan the QR code. Always, please, folks, reach out. Last time I was on this webinar, I had, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 people reach out to me and ask me questions. I will do my best to answer all of them. So please reach out, josh@nonprofitstorytelling.com. Oops, I forgot to put the .com. josh@nonprofitstorytellingconference.com. Thank you.
So good. All right, I'm going to share my screen to do some very quick housekeeping stuff, and then we're going to dive in on some Q&A for the brief time that we have remaining. All right, so first things first, my colleague, Josh and I don't work together, but the rest of our beloved colleague, Phoebe, is going to drop a link in the chat. Thank you, Phoebe, right on time, for the survey. So please make a quick note in there if you'd like a copy of The Power of Storytelling. So make that. The other thing is that this Thursday, so in 47 hours, at noon Eastern time, we're going to do a deep dive on some of our new plan giving websites. So if anyone's interested in that, it's one of the 4 or 5 things that FreeWill does, and honestly does super well. So they're beautiful. They involve a lot of the best practices that we're talking about. So come hang out with us then. I'll be there. Josh will be doing better things at that time, but and what's the next slide? And then personally, I think that there's 3 things that are going to really, really, really matter next year in nonprofit fundraising, setting aside direct mail, which is sort of an overarching strategy. 1 is plan giving as we enter the Great Wealth Transfer. 2 is donor advised funds as they continue to explode and they become an enormously high percentage of all giving. And 3 is how AI is gonna really shift the way we create a lot of our stuff. And a lot of, those are basically my 3 predictions for 2024 in terms of what's gonna be really big. On December 19th, we're gonna do a real deep dive on donor advised funds and what to expect in 2024. We're gonna look at some hard data from 2022 that just came out. We're gonna start to extrapolate what to expect. We're gonna look at some of the data that we've seen in-house and internally. We're gonna talk about some of the interesting context there and some really important sort of very specific tactics that you can plug into your existing program to get a lot more donor advised fund gifts. So hang out with us. It is 1 o'clock, so maybe we'll do a couple of minutes of Q&A, but if anyone has to leave, just wanted to tell you that we're so happy you're here. We're so happy you got to hang out with Josh.
Great to see you all. Yeah.
Happy Hanukkah, happy Advent, happy end of year giving season.
Can I answer a question in chat from Susan? Susan said, why no QR codes on the letter or the envelope? No QR codes on the letter because you need all the space there to be just about whatever the thing you're asking donors to do, right? You don't want to distract them with a leak point as they're reading the letter, suddenly see a QR code and scan it. You want them to read as much of the letter as possible. No QR code on the outer envelope, because then you're holding up a big sign that says to the donor, this is a fundraising letter, and they're going to put it in the recycle bin. You want to have on the outside of your envelope something that's enticing and gets the donor to open it, and a QR code is sort of giving away exactly what's inside.
Yeah. Hey, Josh, we got a couple questions on the length, right? What's the sort of thinking and the research behind a 2 or 3 or 4 page letter over a 1 page letter?
Yes. Okay. Can I do my thing? This will take 15 seconds.
Imagine everyone's allowed to leave if they don't want to hear this. So feel free to talk for a few more minutes, folks that want to stay.
Imagine this is a 2-page fundraising letter. Okay. Imagine this is a 1-page fundraising letter. This is how long I will spend with it as a donor. I'll open it up and I'll 5 seconds. Okay. Now imagine it's a 2-page letter. Here's how long I'll spend with it. 10 seconds. Okay. So I've just doubled the amount of time I have donors attention by making it a 2-page letter. Now imagine it's a 4-page letter. I'll skip it, but you understand it'll be about 20 seconds. So the longer the letter, the more time people will spend with it, the more likely they are to see the thing that you're asking them to do, the fundraising offer, the problem that you want them to solve. That's why 4-page letters work.
There's also this sort of reciprocity phenomenon in psychology. So if I spend more time explaining something, asking for something, not only do you spend more time listening, but it's clear that I spend a ton of time in preparation to ask you for this. And it's sort of, it's the same theory as the paperclip or the other, the handwritten, just there's a little bit extra effort in that. Then, humans really sort of kick in this idea of like, oh, if someone's putting an effort for me, I should put an effort for them. And so you'll get a little bit of that on 3 and 4. So that's really helpful.
Patrick, I'm sorry to do this. I have a 1 o'clock webinar.
You gotta go. Okay.
Storytelling conference, so I have to bounce. But grateful to be with you guys. Please send me a note if you have any follow-up questions. I will be sure to answer as many of them as I can. Josh@nonprofitstorytelling.com.
All right. See you soon, Josh. Everybody else, big thank you for being here. We know that there's a lot going on in your life and your world, but as we're really thinking about having a wildly successful 2024, this stuff is super important. So if you haven't already, please click that link in the chat, fill out that survey. We'd love that. If you need anything else, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm super easy to find. I'm Patrick Schmitt. I work at FreeWill, the only one that does. And you can always just shoot me an email as well. I did see that 1 or 2 people sent me an email about great gifts for 2-year-olds. So I really appreciate that. And generally being part of this community is one of the highlights of my life. So thanks so much. And talk to y'all very soon.